Okay, so I originally had a video planned for the full Cannes Festival. I had one planned for the Palme d'Or, the Uncertain Regard, and the Out of Competition category. Upon trying to edit that video, I realized that I had fucked up the audio somehow. I'm hoping that the audio on this comes out properly. If it doesn't, I'm just going to post it anyways, I suppose. But because I have effectively run out of time this week and I need to move on to making the review for Monday, I am now just going to do the Palme d'Or section, considering that is the main focus of the Cannes Festival, anyways. I have shrunk the list down to 10 films that I am interested in. There are films that aren't included that I still hold some interest in, but for whatever reason, I've just chose to exclude them. So let's just get straight into this. I have about 35 minutes to record this video, so it's going to be fairly swift. Some directors will probably get more of a focus, some films will probably get more of a focus than others, but let's just get into it. The Venetian Scheme by Wes Anderson. I don't need to say very much about this. A spy thriller sort of film centered around Benicio del Toro's character. I will say Wes Anderson isn't one of my favorite directors. He doesn't have a style that particularly appeals to me. It isn't to say that it's bad or anything. I'm just not really interested in that kind of sort of kids film, I would guess you say. I am just much more of a Pixar guy, I suppose. A spy film I will watch regardless of what the focus is. Make it comedic, dark, horror, psychological, whatever it is. I will watch it. So I will watch this. I love Benicio del Toro. I think he's a great actor. Richard Ayoade is one of my favourite British comedians. So there's a lot going on here that is for me personally. It's just that Wes Anderson writ large isn't really a director that I'm in love with. He is someone I have a lot of respect for. I think Mr. Fantastic or Fantastic Mr. Fox is definitely one of my favourite animated films. I think it's a great, great film. But writ large, like I say, he's just not a director that a lot of his films apply to me or appeal to me. So when we go through this, I wouldn't say he's gonna figure into one of my top 3 or 4 films that I'm looking forward to based on this list. Eddington by Ari Aster. This is what I would call the most mainstream film to focus on the COVID-19 pandemic that is coming out as of yet, basically. Ari Aster is obviously still a high-profile director. He's lost some of his buzz since Hereditary and Midsommar. I feel like that is almost by design. You don't make Beau's Afraid and expect it to be a massive film. And he's a director that I find fairly intimidating. I loved Hereditary, but I can never watch it again because I was so scared. Part of that is the edible that I had eaten 5 minutes prior to watching the film. But that film struck such fear into me. Midsommar, it was a psychological terror where I was like, I hope I'm never dating a woman that is like that and who, essentially burns me down in a ritualistic breakup. And then Beau's Afraid, I never got round to, but I want to. But the combination of what I've heard people say about the film, what I know about the film, and its length makes it a sort of hodgepodge of things that intimidate me, as I say about Ari Aster writ large. This will be one that I get around to eventually, Beau's Afraid, I mean. And Eddington is one that I feel like I'm going to be seated pretty much day one when this comes out. Because I'm interested to see what his take on the COVID-19 pandemic is. Particularly, he has said that he can only really write movies when he's going through something. So I want to see what his take on the COVID crisis is. Obviously, as someone who has lived through that, I'm interested to see what he was going through in that period and what he puts on film as a result of his experiences during COVID. It seems like he's particularly interested in the isolation element and the consuming addiction with social media and our phones, and the idea of doom scrolling. There's a lot of ideas in here that I feel like are very relevant to the modern era, the post-pandemic cinema. With that being said, I think it's a very difficult thing to master, this idea of filming a phone, filming technology, especially contemporarily, and making it something that is relatable but doesn't feel too corny, I guess. And so I'm skeptical, but I'm optimistic. He's a director that, like I said, I have a lot of respect for. He's not someone that I'm expecting. I expect that he knows that this idea that he's come up with is incredibly hard to focus on, and it's incredibly hard to sell as a movie. So I'm expecting something thought provoking, challenging from this film, and I wouldn't expect anything else from an Ari Aster film, anyways. And then we come on to another director that I find quite challenging, which is Julia Ducournau. She has made the films Raw and Titan. I believe it's Titan. I don't think it's Titan. I think it's Titan. Both films that I'm incredibly intrigued by, but just haven't got around to watching, because with Raw in particular, I feel like it's going to mess me up, and I want to watch this film. I just when I look at the trailer and when I look at the posters for it, I'm left with this feeling of like, oh, this is gonna make me nauseous, and this is gonna fuck me up, and gonna have me lasting, or have a lasting effect on me, and it's gonna be something that I think about for a long time. But nevertheless, she is a director that I'm really interested in. I'm definitely gonna end up watching her films before Alpha comes out. And Alpha very much follows the sort of prototypical Julia Ducournau pattern that I can tell exists in her films. It focuses on a young woman who is going through something extreme in her life, and it is basically, I would say, that the exploration of a young woman's life, I guess, through an extreme situation. In this situation, I'm not really sure what the focus is. It seems to be something about an illness and the ensuing bullying that the said girl experiences at her school as a result of this apparent illness. It seems a much more tame idea than the previous two films that she's had, or that she's made. But nevertheless, there are plenty of directors who can take a tame idea and make it untamed. And given the previous two films that she has made, I would expect her in particular to take a tame idea and just make something fucked up out of it anyways. So she's intrigues me. This film I really want to see. I just need to make sure it's not my first film I see from her. I will go back and watch Raw. I will say it before I watch the film, surely, definitely. The history of sound, I'm not familiar with Oliver Hermanus, I have to say. He is a director that I've heard his name in passing connected with this movie, but he's not a director that I know pretty much anything about. This is a film apparently centered on two musicians played by Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor during World War One, who were attempting to document the lives of, I believe it's American servicemen during the war, and using music as a method to do that. I'm not really sure what that entails, but I am intrigued by it. I like World War One period pieces. I like anything from that sort of time. I don't think we get enough films centered on World War One, because obviously World War Two takes up a lot of the focus. A film centered around that period of time with actors like Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor, I'm gonna find intriguing. Paul Mescal is a very good actor, in my opinion. I haven't seen as much of his stuff as everyone else, but he's basically able to sell a film on his screen presence alone. Normal people I haven't seen. A lot of other films, Gladiator 2, I haven't seen. It just didn't intrigue me, to be honest. I didn't think it looked great. But All of Us Strangers, that he was in at the start of last year, back end of 2023, I thought was great. I didn't actually think he was in the film as much as he could have been, and probably should have been. He really sold it. As an actor who I don't believe is bisexual or gay, he really sells it. He really, becomes the character that he is. Yeah, I'm on his presence alone, I think that this is going to be at least an acting masterclass. Josh O'Connor, I also think is a great actor. I think he's, to be honest, one that I'm more excited by than Paul Mescal. I think Challengers alone, he was great in. I didn't think Challengers was a great movie. I thought it was pretty vain. I thought it was pretty empty and lacking of substance, and it, focused on style over substance. If that's your kind of thing, then fair enough. It's just not my kind of thing personally. But I thought Josh O'Connor was great. He had this charm about him where he knew he was a dick. He knew he was a cunt. But nevertheless, he was like, deal with it, I suppose. And it clearly rubs off on the characters around him who can't resist that charm that his character has and are essentially almost addicted to his personality. And I found it so intriguing, and he's such a clever actor for it. In the two films that are on this list that contain, or he is in, I would say they're very different from that role. Based on just the select images that we have, I would say that he appears to be playing much kinder characters, or at least, characters that aren't, that sort of arrogant, cocky guy that he is in Challengers. So this is one that I'm very intrigued by. It's just one that I don't have a lot of information or knowledge about. And it will be one that I probably try and see on day one. But because of my lack of knowledge of the director, it's not one that I'm overly excited for. And then we come on to Nouvelle Vague. I won't say very much about this, but, Richard Linklater is a director I love, but I haven't, unfortunately, seen Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless. I know for a lot of people on the internet, that is basically sacrilege to call yourself a film buff and not having seen that movie. But French New Wave is a massive blind spot of mine, and it is one that I will rectify at some point this year. I just haven't got around to it. But Linklater is a director I love. I thought Boyhood was great. Dazed and Confused is great. Before Sunrise is great. Everybody Wants Some is great. He, in my opinion, has this fascination with Americana that really rubs off on me, and his, desire to make experimental filmmaking, whether it be making a film over 12 years for one day or one week a year, or whether it is waiting 7 years for your actors to age up in order to make a sequel. Whatever it is, Richard Linklater has this idea about what experimental and independent filmmaking should be that is such an appealing thing to me. And yet he can also make your more simple hour and a half comedy films like Everybody Wants Some or Dazed and Confused. And he's a director that really appeals to me. Like, I've also included Zoe Deutsch on the screen. Zoe Deutsch is an actress that I think is really, really good, especially when she's in a Linklater film. I haven't seen Breathless. I'm not going to review this film without having seen Breathless first. So, yes, I'm looking forward to it based on the names that are attached to it and the property that I know is meant to be very, very good and influential and great and one of the best films ever. I just haven't seen it personally. And then we come on to a film that I'm intrigued by and want to see based on nothing other than the concept alone. I don't know the director. I don't know any of the actors attached to it. But this idea of a film set in 1937 Russia or the Soviet Union, and focusing on the idea of this prosecutor who is idealistic or idyllic and is attempting to fight the case or the corner of a man who he believes has been wrongly prosecuted by the Soviet justice system, and coming to terms with the idea that actually the justice system or the Soviet Union writ large actually isn't this perfect thing that he believes it is. That is such an intriguing idea to me, especially because I don't believe we get enough films centered on this period of time. And I'm really interested in this concept, and it's a period of time that I don't think we get enough films about, because I don't think a lot of directors are interested in it, particularly because there's a lack of experience on a lot of Western directors from this period of time, obviously because the USSR closed itself up pretty much entirely. And so it's something that I think in large part has escaped cinema, or at least has escaped Western cinema. And I'm intrigued by it on nothing other than the concept alone. I can't say anything about the names attached to it. Sergei Lotznitzer, I believe that's how you pronounce it, is the Ukrainian director that is attached to the film. But I can't tell you whether or not he's a good director because I don't know who he is. Just going to be honest with you on that front. Then we have Lynn Ramsey's Die My Love. Now, Lynn Ramsey, I've heard a lot of good things, but I haven't watched any of her films. There are a couple that are on my watch list that I just haven't got around to. We need to talk about Kevin, the Tilda Swinton and Ezra Miller film centered around this guy who, nature versus nurture argument. By nature, he is just a not very good person, and that results in him, committing a mass murder. Spoilers. Then Lynn Ramsey's other film that I've heard is very good, You Were Never Really Here. This is the Joaquin Phoenix film where I believe he plays a hitman and he changes sides essentially and goes after this young girl who has been kidnapped. Now, I'm very interested in this film because of who is connected to it. Jennifer Lawrence is in a bit of a comeback right now, and I'm excited to see what she can do as the lead actress in a more serious drama piece. I hope this goes well for her because she is a good actress who I would just say has fallen out of favour in, what would you say, maybe the past 5 or 6 years, maybe a bit longer. She was really up there until about 2015-16 and then has sort of gone through a dip in her career and is sort of coming back now with films like No Hard Feelings, which I thought was really funny. She showed a funny comedic side of herself that I don't think has previously been seen in any of her films. So for her sake, I hope this goes well. The concept sounds a bit strange, or maybe just a bit, not strange even, just a bit simple. The idea of a single mother who's going through some sort of psychological breakdown or collapse is a very simple concept that I feel like we've probably seen a fair few times on screen now. But again, if she's able to sell that role, then good for her. I hope this goes well. Robert Pattinson is one of my favourite working actors right now. The Batman, I've made no bones about the idea that that is my favourite Batman film of all time now. And he's one that if he's attached to anything, I will watch it regardless of what it is. I watched Mickey 17 basically just because it had Bong Joon-ho connected to it and Robert Pattinson. Didn't think it was a great movie, but he is pretty good in it. So yes, this is one that I'm a very much looking forward to purely because of just who is attached to it without knowing anything about the novel that the film is adapted from and also not knowing very much about the director. And then we come on to the mastermind. I'm not going to spend any time basically talking about Josh O'Connor because I've already talked about him in connection with the history of sound. Now, Kelly Reichardt, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. Don't know anything about her. I've heard only good things, but I can't say anything because I don't really know who she is. But John Magaro, I love this guy. I think he's a great actor. I think he's a really underappreciated character actor. I think he's great in September 5th, which is the movie about the Munich Olympics kidnapping of Israeli Olympians. He's also great in Past Lives as this sort of melancholic figure who is almost getting in the way of this long lost love and the first love of these two young Koreans or Korean American. And he's great in both of those films. I love him. I think he's a great actor. I just don't think he gets enough roles or enough starring roles, in my opinion. In both of the films that I've just mentioned, he's the supporting actor, and he seems to be the supporting actor in this film. But maybe that is what he's going for if, he's continuously put in that position. And then we have Sound of Falling. Again, I don't know anything about Masha Shalinsky. I believe that's how you pronounce that name. But this video is coming out a few days into Cannes already happening. And I will say that I've only heard good things about Sound of Falling. The concept of a film taking place over 100 years with 4 generations of of one family is a concept that sounds really intriguing to me. I'm really interested in the idea of how different figures throughout time sort of mirror one another. And if you read David Ehrlich's review in IndieWire of this film, that sounds like the focus, or at least one of the focuses of this film. I'm really intrigued by this film. I don't know how like much about it, but I will say I'm very interested in it, and I hope it goes well for it, and I hope it's a good film ultimately. Sentimental Value, Joachim Trier's new film. This has got Renata Renz, something like that, and Stellan Skarsgård. I literally, in preparation for this video, watched The Worst Person in the World this morning, and that film fucked me up. And based on the few or just couple pictures that have been put out there, stills that have been put out there of Sentimental Value, I feel like this film is also going to fuck me up. Because I've got a bit of recency bias, obviously, because I've just watched it. I am immediately on board with whatever he does next. Stellan Skarsgård, I don't need to talk about that guy. Like, come on, man. We all know like how good of an actor he is. Renata Reins, this was my first experience with her, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like she's like genuinely heartbreaking in every scene. Like, as someone who is going through this existential crisis over a period of like 4 or 5 years, she really sells this idea of, I don't know my place in the world, and that should be okay. And yet the world is trying to convince me that it's not. And Joachim Trier, really leaves it open, in my opinion, about, is she a good person? Is she a terrible person? Is it just somewhere in between? I think, he wants you to make a judgment on his main character in The Worst Person in the World. And that, to me, is such a powerful and brave thing to do when almost every director is sort of shepherding you to this sort of opinion that they have and want you to see it from their perspective. I don't think Joachim Trier, at least in The Worst Person in the World, takes that approach, and I'm really intrigued to see if he does that again, or if that was just a one-time thing, and that this is much more like, no, this is what I think of this character or these characters. And given that he's working with the same actress again in the lead role, I'm like, all right, well, she was great in that. You directed it great. Let's see what the fuck is going on in this film. I think that a lot of the experimental elements that he plays with, in terms of, making it a cartoon at certain points, the voiceover basically interacting with the dialogue that's happening in a scene, is really, really fun. And it could be something that I would expect a lot of people would go, no, I don't like that. That's really a poor decision. I don't like that. I want to just see the scene unfold naturally. The performances on screen of the actors and actresses are naturalistic and lived in and feel as if they are real people. I don't have an issue with the director experimenting alongside that and going, well, they're just everyday people, but this is sort of what is going on inside their mind, sort of thing. I think that's a really interesting approach to take to directing, and it makes the editing and the director feel like a character in and of itself, or in and of themselves, whilst not taking away from Renata Ryan's performances and no one else's, Axel's and Ivan's. The performances in this film are great, and the only criticism I had of the movie was that half an hour where we're taken away from Axel's character and taken to Ivan's. I was sort of like, oh, well, he's not as intriguing of a character, and that is obviously because he isn't fleshed out as well or as much. And that's the only criticism I had of that movie. The tampon scene is obviously a bit weird and a bit cringe, but whatever. I can get over like a momentary thing with that. I would say every film on this list, I'm interested in some way, one one or another way. If I had to make a guess at what I think might win, I feel like it might be sentimental value, but I might be just biased in that regard and hoping it wins. I wouldn't be surprised if Nouvelle Vague won it because, the film is about a French film. Cannes is a French film, and also the film industry writ large loves to pat itself on its back and talk about the art of making films. Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if those are the two frontrunners, and essentially if it's back and forth between which one is going to win it. If I had to say anything else, I would maybe think Eddington, because Ari Aster is a bit of an industry darling at this point. If I was going on what are my films that I'm most interested in, I would probably say Eddington because I'm just an Ari Aster guy. Alpha just because of the style of Julia Ducournau's films and how it has a unique individual sort of cinematic language that every film that she makes could feel or does feel like it almost fits in the same universe. And I can tell that without even having watched any of her films. And then Sentimental Value, I'm obviously biased because I've just watched that film this morning, but I really love the naturalistic feeling that his movies have and the open-endedness of his characters and going, you choose who's in the right. Are they in the wrong? Is everyone in the wrong? Is everyone a dickhead? Is everyone just a nice person? Is everyone, sort of down the middle? That's up to you. It's your decision. I'm not going to guide you through it. I really am glad I've watched this film in preparation for this video, and I'm really glad I've watched this film before Sentimental Value comes out, and now I just can't wait to watch that and see what experimental ways Joachim Trier is able to direct and edit the film, and does Renata Ryans take a naturalistic approach to this character again? Is it similar? Is it completely different? Or does she take a much more over the top or deliberately dramatic sense of acting? That is probably the film that I'm most intrigued by now. Again, that's a biased decision, but that is the way it is. I've obviously sped through this video. This is by no means my best video ever. I'm not going to lie about that. But I also want to be as committed as I possibly can to doing 2 videos a week. If I say that I'm going to do 2 videos a week and then I don't, I lie to myself. I lie to the people that watch these videos. And, I'm not under any, assumption that I'm the biggest thing ever. I don't even get 50 views on every video. But I will never get to that point consistently if I'm not consistent with the 5 people that watch these videos. So, yes, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Thank you for, watching me ramble. Thank you, sorry that this video isn't as high quality. Sorry that I didn't get through these other slides that I had prepared. I took a long time to read about every film on this list. And there were other films that I wanted to talk about, and I just don't have the time, unfortunately, to get around them. That was my fault that I've fucked up the audio. It doesn't fall on anyone else. If anything goes wrong on this channel, it is my responsibility. But that's enough rapping. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, Letterboxd, Twitter, TikTok. I post twice a week on TikTok. I post every film I watch on Letterboxd. If you watch this far, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Follow everything else that I've just mentioned. Thank you for watching. Bye.